Hi everyone, my name is Cindy and I'm here to talk to you today about right whales with the Year of the Right Whale Infinity Project. We're going to start off today talking a little bit about right whales and kind of what they look like. And we're going to talk about how we recognize individuals, what we know about them, and how they're studied. So what research techniques are used to study right whales. So to get started, what do they look like? So I want you to think about a humpback whale and a right whale. And I want you to look at this picture for a second and just think about things that are similar and things that are different between humpback whales and right whales. So a humpback whale is probably a species of whale that you might be a little more familiar with than a right whale. So there's a lot of things that are different. First of all, humpback whales have a dorsal fin and right whales do not. They both lift their tails up when they go down for a deeper dive, but the shape of their tail is really different. If you look at the humpbacks, they have this really big, deep notch, then this kind of jagged edge, whereas right whales are really smooth. They kind of have these big sail-like tails. So these paddle-like flippers, right? They are huge. If you were a 6-foot tall man, you would be about as tall as those flippers. They do behavior similar to humpback whales. They'll jump headfirst out of the water. That's called a breach. They have baleen in their mouth, okay? So baleen that's one piece of baleen on the side of your screen there. They're 6 to 9 feet long. They hang from their upper jaw. So they have 200 to 300 of these baleen plates along each side of their mouth. So there's a lot of them. And they filter these little tiny zooplankton out of the water. And when right whales feed, they open their mouths at the surface and they swim through the water really slowly. And the water goes in through the front of their mouth and out through the baleen. The water can go out, but those little tiny copepods get stuck on the inside, and then occasionally the whale will swallow those copepods. The other thing is, if you look at their heads, they have these white patches all over their heads. And these are really, really important for right whales, because this is what we use to help us recognize individual right whales. So if you look at these bumps, they're actually like calluses, like you get on your hands and sometimes your feet, like rough, tough skin. And then what happens with right whale is these little critters called cyanids live on these calluses, and so it kind of turns them white. And what scientists have recognized is that when they look at these colossity patterns, they're different among each whale. And so on the bottom, this whole slide is just from a talk, but there on the top, it shows you when the scientists are in the field, they'll draw pictures of what these right whales look like. And then in the bottom picture, you can see the actual pictures of the right whales' heads. So I have a little game for you to play. These are 4 whales: Calvin, Bocce, Mayport, and Halo. So their pictures are on the left-hand side. I want you to look at the whales on the right-hand side and see if you can match up who is who. Okay, and I'll give you a minute to do that. So how'd you do? Is this what you came up with? It's hard. I think matching right whales is hard. So where are they found? There's actually 3 species of right whales. The North Atlantic right whale is typically found in the North Atlantic from basically Florida up through Canada. The original range, though, was all the way across the North Atlantic. There's another group in the North Pacific, between Alaska and Russia. And in the Southern Ocean, there are right whales around Argentina, around Africa, around Australia. There's different populations. In the North Atlantic, we can zero in a little bit more specifically and look at where these animals are found. In the winter, they're typically found in their breeding grounds off the coast of Georgia and Florida. In the spring, they often come up to the Gulf of Maine, as well as the Great South Channel, which is a little bit to the east of Cape Cod. In the summer, they used to go to the Bay of Fundy, which is that near Grand Manan Basin. That was a hot spot for whales for a lot of years. And then something's shifted in the last few years. It's possibly because the water temperature in the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than any other body of water. And so it could be that because of the warming temperatures, it's shifted currents, and so it's shifted where the food is, where those little tiny copepods are. So the right whales are going a little bit more in search of. In the last 5 years or so, they've been seen quite a bit in the summer and fall up in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. So how do we study right whales? How do we learn about them? One way is doing aerial surveys. In this picture, you can see the plane that they fly in. The picture, I love the third picture over of Allison sticking her head out the window. There's bubble windows on the side of this airplane, and the scientists stick their head through those bubble windows, and they're able to look directly down underneath the plane. So they're doing track line surveys. So they fly the same path, and they look for whales on either side of the airplane. Once they see them, they might circle to take their research pictures and then continue on the track lines. These are just some cool pictures that they found. I love this one because it's a right whale on the left-hand side, an Atlantic white-sided dolphin on the bottom, and then a fin whale on the top. So fin whales are about 70 to 75 feet long. This right whale, it's a 2-year-old right whale. So, maybe it's 40 feet long, something like that. And the dolphin is about 6 to 9 feet long. And then this is just another picture. This was a picture of Binary and her calf, and then another individual, and they're surface feeding. So the two adults, you can see their mouths are wide open. The kind of lighter patch on the bottom of their jaw is their tongue. And you can see the yellowish kind of color is the baleen that's hanging down from the side. There's also boat-based surveys that will go out and look for these animals. The difference between aerial surveys and boat-based surveys, the aerial surveys get that aerial view of the whale's colossity patterns, and sometimes it's a little bit easier to identify them looking at those aerial photographs. Another way to study them is using passive acoustics. So passive acoustics is basically an underwater microphone recording sounds for 2 or 3 months at a time, and then that microphone gets picked up and those sounds can be analyzed. Don't get overwhelmed by this entirely. Up in the left-hand corner is a map of the United States, okay? And then each of the little boxes is just a different research area. The yellow, the black, and the kind of reddish or pinkish dots are basically recording devices. So there are these different underwater microphones and split by time, okay? So that just gives you an idea that's where the research is occurring. This is just the different times, the different locations. So Davis Strait is up in the upper left-hand corner, then Iceland and Greenland, that's like a little inset. The areas I want you to look at, remember I said that the whales used to be in the Bay of Fundy, which is basically number 4 in this map, as well as a little bit in number 3. And they kind of abandoned that location after 2010. And in fact, it shows up. So what these devices are recording is not necessarily the numbers of whales, but the number of sounds that the whales make. So on the left-hand column here, between 2004 and 2010, you can see a lot. It's like a year's worth of sounds. And this area on the right-hand part of that 2004 to 2010, you can see a lot of sounds are being detected. Between 2011 and 2014, there are hardly any sounds detected. And so it's just visually the whales were not seen after 2010, but acoustically too, they weren't heard. And so it's an indication, it just kind of doubles our understanding of what's going on. We can look if they're, depending on where the recorders are, then we can detect where the increases are. So another way to study them is using archival or satellite tags. And these are two different things. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a satellite tag. So those are basically, they're put into the blubber and the muscle of the whale. And every time the whale comes to the surface, it sends a satellite signal up to the satellite and to a computer to mark the whale's location. And so this just shows the track of a whale that was tagged off the coast of Virginia. And then about 2 weeks later, it was off in the southern part of Massachusetts. So we can get an idea of where the whales are moving. And from this, you can see they're traveling really close to shore. They're not doing a straight line up to New York. They're traveling really close to shore. The satellite tags are going into the blubber of the whale. There's another type of tag, an archival tag, which is suction cup to the back of the whale. And it's basically recording the pitch, the roll, the fluke beats, the sounds, the depth, all of this information multiple times a second. So you get this really fine scale information about what the whales are doing underneath the surface of the water. So this is a video of one of these tags being deployed by Peter Madsen, who's a scientist over in Europe. This tag is being put on a humpback whale, but they've also been used on a lot of different species.
Yep. Well done. That was perfect. They are very calm.
Where's escort? Okay, escort's up ahead.
Yeah, we're fine.
Perfect.
Well done.
That would be something that I would love to do. This is what we can get from this sort of a tag. Okay, so this is, in the picture, you see the little white spot on the back of the right whale, like in the middle of the screen. That's the actual tag on the back of the whale. And then if you look at these two graphs, they're basically showing time is going along the x-axis, and then depth is along the y-axis. So the surface of the water is at the top, and then the depth in meters is at the bottom, and the scale is there. So this was 12 meters deep. So the animal is diving up, down, coming up to the surface, diving down, coming up to the surface. It has some jagged movements at the bottom. Those could be feeding. It could be down at depth feeding on the copepods that are down there, but it gives you an idea of what these animals are doing underneath the surface of the water. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the biology of the whales, how we study them. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, certainly reach out to us at the Year of the Right Whale. Thank you.